Back in 2021, Apple released their M series MacBook Pros, and I was one of the first to part with their hard-earned cash. Back then, I was desperate to ditch the widely criticised Touch Bar MacBook Pros, and this newly redesigned M series MacBook Pro solves nearly every issue its predecessor was slammed for. Overheating, a lack of ports, an unreliable keyboard. It fixed all of those problems. And at the time, it was an absolute beast. A game changer. Without a doubt, the best piece of technology I have ever owned. But fast forward to over 3 years later, and I'm still using the same laptop. But how has it held up in the long run? And is it still worth it for music producers in 2025? In this video, I'll share my honest experience of using the M1 Pro MacBook Pro over the past 3 years, and why I think it's still one of the best tools out there for music production. Sure, the new M4 Macs are obviously more powerful, but the M1 Pro could well be the best value proposition of any Mac on the market right now. As someone who relies on their MacBook every single day to record, produce, mix and master music, as well as edit 4K videos for YouTube, like the one you're watching right now, performance and reliability are crucial for my workflow, and I'm about to put this machine through its paces as I begin recording my band's entire EP from this very room in my apartment. So if you are interested in seeing how this Mac performs, make sure you subscribe so you can follow along. This is episode 2 in the making of series focused on the centerpiece of my production workflow. Let's get into it. Alright, a quick spec rundown. So I went with the 16-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro with 32GB of unified memory and 1TB of solid state storage. And genuinely, from the moment I picked this device up, I was blown away. Not just by its speed, but mainly by its efficiency. I mean, even today, the fans barely turn on, even during heavy sessions in Logic. No stuttering, no overheating, it just handles everything that I throw at it. And of course, if I pile on enough CPU-intensive plugins, I'll eventually be greeted with that dreaded system overload window. But for everyday use, recording and producing at home, using basic AI tools like Stem Splitter, 3 years later and it still doesn't even break a sweat. I'm seriously impressed. Link up here by the way to episode 1 in this series where I use Stem Splitter to isolate some drums and create a demo for the first song of this EP. I myself work with primarily live instrumentation, so guitars and basses and things like that, but I do use a lot of plugins, and I mean a lot. But despite that, my sessions run with minimal lag and minimal crashes. I say minimal because when I start stacking a frankly ridiculous amount of plugins on every track, that's when the M1 Pro does start to struggle a little bit. A good example of this is a track that I started quite a few months ago but never finished called Funny Old Place. This is one of my originals and it has about 45 tracks in the session in total, so not a huge amount. But each guitar track has 8 or 10 plugins on it, and those tracks are routed to buses which have even more plugins on them. I'm talking your compressors, your EQs, your reverbs, delays, saturators, etc. But this session is the first of mine where I've used AI drums using Logic's new Session Plays feature. And I have found that with this particular session, it's becoming increasingly difficult for the CPU to actually handle me recording more tracks into the session, like vocals for example, which I left to last. And I have hit that dreaded system overload window a couple of times. 3 years on though, and here's how I'm getting around it. I've actually started printing my tracks once I'm happy with them. That means bouncing down effects heavy parts, like guitars for example, which use an amp sim or lots of plugins on them. So they become simple audio files rather than live plugin chains. And not only does this free up the CPU, but it actually forces me to commit to sounds instead of endlessly tweaking them. And honestly, that's the biggest reason why I never seem to finish my songs. I am a tweaker, it has to be said. I could tweak and tweak until the cows come home. So yeah, working with the M1 Pro has actually weirdly helped me become way more decisive when it comes to music production. And don't get me wrong, it is a limitation, but for most people, it really shouldn't be, if you know what I mean. The only real issue or problem I've had with this laptop isn't really with the laptop at all, it's with Logic Pro. Recently, I've noticed more bugs creeping into Logic Pro. I'm not sure what's going on with Apple's software teams, but even the iPhone seems to be getting way more buggy these days. macOS itself has been flawless, I just can't fault it. But Logic has been acting and behaving a bit weird at times. I've been having this issue where, say I'm working on a session, sort of halfway through, a couple of the audio files just will stop playing back the audio, for no apparent reason, until I restart the session and then they just work as expected again. It's really strange. But yeah, that's just my experience. Would love to know if you've been having any similar issues and let me know in the comments if you have. But yeah, that's a software thing, not a hardware thing. The other thing that I wanted to talk about here is just how well this device has aged. It's something that you don't really hear tech channels talking about a lot. By the time they've reviewed one new thing, it's on to the next new thing. But if you cast your mind back to the old days of the Touch Bar MacBook Pros, not only did their batteries degrade super fast over time, mainly due to overheating and thermal throttling issues, but they used to get so scratched up, didn't they? Maybe it was due to the smaller form factor and the thinness and the shape of the device, I don't really know. But these things do not scratch or dent nearly as easily. And I think it's because there's no sharp edges on the edges of the device. And so it's much less prone to scratching and denting. Although mine does have a few battle scars, I must say. My fault entirely. I really need to stop accidentally dropping things on my £3,000 machine. But yeah, even the keyboard just works flawlessly 3 years on. I remember those butterfly style keys on the old Touch Bar MacBook Pros, and they just used to get stuck, didn't they, every so often? And they just didn't age well at all. But most of all, I'm seriously impressed with the battery life on this thing. It is just so good. So I've gone through only 260 cycles in the past 3 years, because the battery is just so efficient and so good. So that's benefit number one. Benefit two is that as a result, the battery is still holding 92% of its original charge capacity. So at this rate of degradation, this Mac could easily last me another 3 years before I even start to see any noticeable decreases in the battery performance. As part of making this EP, I've been bobbing about London, travelling to the respective flats and apartments of each of my band members to write, record, demo, and just try out and test out ideas for this new EP. And it's just been so nice having the peace of mind that if I charge my laptop the night before, I just don't need to worry about battery the next day. Countless times I've just thrown my laptop in my bag, just not even worried about the charger, and spent the entirety of the next day just going from place to place to record and test out ideas. It's just been an absolute dream. Just brilliant from Apple. And speaking of taking the laptop around with me across London, portability is obviously something worth talking about. Now, the 16-inch MacBook Pro is one chunky boy, but if Apple were to ask me, would you be willing to trade some thermal performance and battery life for a thinner and lighter design? I'd be like, absolutely not, no way. Why? And that is my biggest worry surrounding the rumours on the MacBook Pro redesign, apparently coming in 2026. Apple is rumoured to be going down the thinner and lighter route again. And considering what's happened in the past, this just makes me nervous. Although with Apple's new M series chips being so goddamn efficient, maybe they can pull it off this time. Maybe we can have our cake and eat it. Incredible performance, great battery life, no thermal issues, all in a thin and light design. But I guess we'll have to see, won't we? The M1 Pro is a heavy machine, don't get me wrong, but it's not so heavy that it's not portable. It's just less portable than other devices. But for the performance I'm getting 3 years on, I don't mind at all. That said, this trusty Mac is about to be put through the ultimate test. I'm making a 5-song EP with my band, and I'm recording the entire thing on this device. No fancy studio setups, no expensive external gear, just this M1 Pro MacBook Pro. We'll be tracking everything here in my spare room and on the go, producing and building up the sessions as we go. And with each session getting more and more plug-in heavy as we build up each of the songs, we'll see if this laptop can actually keep up. I'm foreseeing latency during recording to be a bit of an issue as we start to build up the tracks in the later stages of production, but we'll see. Specs are one thing, but if there was ever a real-world test for this laptop, this is it. So yeah, stay tuned for weekly updates in this series. It's going to be a fun one. Oh, and I'm documenting the making of this EP from start to finish on this channel as well. So if that sounds like a bit of you, get involved. Alright, so say you're looking to buy a new MacBook Pro in 2025. You're thinking, should I go for the M4 Pro for music production? Well, if you've got the budget and you do want the latest and greatest, then go for it. But if you know that you don't need that much power, and you know that your sessions aren't that CPU intensive, you can pick up the 14-inch version of this M1 Pro MacBook Pro right now for less than $1,000 or pounds. I mean, that is a significant saving on the M4 Pro, and depending on your music production needs, this just might make more sense. The M1 Pro can still handle a lot when it comes to music production, and for me, this is just the best value proposition right now for music production in the portable computing space. So yeah, 3 years on, and my M1 Pro MacBook Pro is still performing like it's brand new. Apple made these almost too good, I think. And personally, I don't really see myself upgrading anytime soon unless Apple makes some significant changes to the hardware. So if you do produce music at home and are looking for a new centerpiece for your workflow, the M1 Pro is still a solid choice in 2025. But obviously it's worth considering your workflow needs before you make that decision. I think for most people, this will just work wonders. And if you've used or are still using an M1 Pro MacBook Pro, then we'd love to hear about your experience using this computer for music production in the comments below. Don't forget to drop this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more of this type of content, and as for the EP, well, recording has commenced. Do stay up to date with this series if you're interested in seeing this EP come to life. Link to episode 1 in the series appearing on screen round about now if you fancy a watch. And I will see you very soon. I've gone all in for this ride.